You start the project with real excitement. 2 hours later, you are reorganizing your desktop icons. You promise yourself tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow arrives, nothing is different. There is a man in Greek mythology who was sentenced to push a boulder up a mountain forever. Every time he nears the top, it rolls back down. He starts again, forever. Everyone tells you this is a story about punishment. It is not. It is the most accurate description of procrastination ever written 3,000 years before anyone had the word for it. His name is Sisyphus, and by the end of this video, his punishment is going to teach you something the self-help industry has been selling you wrong for a decade. Sisyphus was a king. Corinth belonged to him, and so did the reputation of being the cleverest man alive, clever enough, the stories say, to trick death himself. When Thanatos, the god of death, came to collect him, Sisyphus asked to test the chains that were meant to bind him, then close them on death instead. For a while, nobody on earth could die. Farmers grew old and refused to leave. Battles produced no bodies. The natural order stopped. The gods were not amused. Ares freed death personally and dragged Sisyphus down to face judgment. Even then, Sisyphus was not finished. He had told his wife before he died not to perform his funeral rites. In the underworld, he complained to Persephone that he had been buried with no honor and asked permission to return briefly to the world above to set it right. She let him go. He never went back. Eventually, the gods dragged him down a second time, and this time they did not just punish him with death. They punished him with an eternity of almost. A boulder, a mountain, push it up, and just before it crests the top, it slips from his grip and rolls to the bottom. He walks back down. He starts again. Not once, not 100 times, forever. That is the image most people remember, a man broken by an impossible task. What most people skip is the detail that actually matters. The boulder always almost makes it. The gods did not design a task that fails immediately. They designed a task that fails at the very last step every single time. That is not a random punishment. That is a precisely engineered psychological trap, and if it sounds familiar, it should. Before we go further, comment below the task you keep almost finishing, the essay at 90%, the workout plan you restart every Monday, the business idea in your notes app for 3 years. I read every comment, and the most common one becomes next week's video. In 1942, a French philosopher named Albert Camus looked at this myth and asked a question nobody had asked in 3,000 years. What if Sisyphus is not the victim of this story? What if he is the only free man in it? Camus pointed out something the gods never accounted for. The walk back down the mountain, the part after the boulder rolls away before he has to start pushing again, belongs to no one but Sisyphus. The gods control the boulder. They do not control that walk. And Camus argued that in that walk, in that brief stretch of the task where nothing is being demanded of him, Sisyphus is thinking. He is conscious of his fate, and that consciousness is the one thing the punishment cannot touch. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart, Camus wrote. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. That is not motivational poster language. It is a precise psychological claim. The moment you stop needing the boulder to stay at the top, the moment you stop measuring your worth by whether the task finally, permanently completes, the task stops being able to punish you. The Stoics, writing centuries before Camus, arrived at the same mountain from a different path. Epictetus built his entire philosophy on one division: things within your control and things outside it. Whether the boulder reaches the summit and stays there outside your control, the gods rigged that part from the start. Whether you push and how you push, and whether you walk back down with dignity instead of dread, entirely inside your control. Every ounce of your anxiety in the myth and in your life comes from fighting for control over the one variable that was never yours to control in the first place. This is where most productivity advice fails you. It tells you to want the boulder to stay at the top. Camus and the Stoics tell you to stop needing it too. Here is the modern piece the ancients could not have named, but described perfectly anyway. Procrastination researchers call it the almost completion trap. Your brain treats a task you left at 90% as more threatening than a task you never started because 90% carries the memory of failure and 0% carries only the fantasy of success. So you avoid the 90% task, not because you are lazy. Because your brain is protecting you from reliving the exact moment the boulder rolled away. That is why the essay sits open in a tab you refuse to close. That is why the gym bag stays packed by the door for a week you never use it. You are not avoiding the work. You are avoiding the mountain remembering what happens right before the top. So here is what Sisyphus, Camus, and a Stoic philosopher writing in Rome would all tell you to actually do this week. First, redefine the win before you start. The win is not Boulder stays at the summit. The win is I pushed today. Write that down before you open the task, not after. Second, name the walk back down. After every session, even an unfinished one, take 5 minutes to notice what you learned, not what you failed to finish. That walk is where Camus says the actual freedom lives. Most people skip it and go straight to punishing themselves. Don't skip it. Third, separate the push from the outcome out loud if you have to. Say it before you start. I am responsible for the pushing. I am not responsible for whether it stays. That sentence, repeated enough times, is the entire Stoic discipline of control in 11 words. The gods gave Sisyphus a task with no finish line, thinking that was the cruelest thing they could invent. They were wrong about what makes a life unbearable. It was never the boulder. It is deciding your worth depends on it staying at the top. Push today, walk down with your head up, push again tomorrow. That is not a punishment. Camus already told you what it is. It's a life, the only kind anyone actually gets. Comment your boulder below. I will see you in the next myth.